And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this is another edition of the Mass Steel Podcast here with me, Charles Prodigy Richey. As right now, we are going to off-season review mode in some ways, as the Steelers off-season has begun last week. As is in week number 2 of the 2019 NFL season, regular season that just concluded a week ago. Got a lot of things I want to get into today on today's podcast, such as who the Steelers should consider releasing as far as working with the salary cap as they go into the next season. What moves should they make? Or that's in regards to keeping the guy in Bud Dupree right there as your right outside linebacker. If the Steelers are going to try and franchise tag him or try and see if they can sign him to a long-term deal. Plus, we also got the All-Pro team that was just announced this past Friday. And a big shout and congratulations to the men that received it on this year's nod. First time Steelers on here that made it on for their first time. You got TJ Watt, left outside linebacker, who actually finished first in forced fumbles, potential defensive player of the year candidate. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to wrap it up. Plus, you also had, joining him on there, you also had Mika Fitzpatrick, who gets his first nod. And you got Cam Hayward with his second All-Pro selection, defensive tackle. And then, of course, big shout and congratulations, Deontay Johnson making it to the second All-Pro team this year. Just doing what he did as a rookie. And, boy, I got to tell you, it's just nothing that ceases to amaze me. But anyway, if you guys want to get on the podcast, like I always said, number to be reached is 312-209-2232. Again, that number to be reached is 312-209-2232. You can always, again, follow me on social media on Twitter, at Prodigy Richey, at Masteel Nation. And, of course, at Masteel CJR, Masteel Nation is my Instagram follow. And then you can also check me out on my YouTube channel, Masteel Podcast. Hope everyone got a chance to enjoy somewhat of the playoffs this past weekend. I know it still sucks with the Steelers not being in it, but I know the biggest headline of the week was definitely the Tennessee Titans. You could probably argue stole the headlines in the first round of the wild card by knocking off the Patriots, defending Super Bowl champions. They find themselves in a situation where they were 10 years ago, not as defending Super Bowl champions, but remember, a year prior to that, you had Tom Brady get lost for the season against the Chiefs in the opener, and I think it was a knee injury. Then he comes back the next year. They win their AFC East division, only to get bounced out to the Baltimore Ravens in the first round of the playoffs, as the Ravens defeated them as a wild card team. And you saw that. And right now, it's definitely not going to be New England in the Super Bowl. But in the AFC, you got the Ravens getting ready to host the Titans. They're going to have the Chiefs hosting the Texans. And then on the NFC side, 49ers surprised to be hosting the Vikings. Big upset win over the New Orleans Saints yesterday afternoon. And then, of course, to wrap things up, you also had the Seattle Seahawks defeating the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round. Carson Wentz still does not get his full playoff experience. But for right now, I want to get some topics later on. And then we're also going to conclude a little bit later on, too, with the 2020 Pro Football Hall of Fame class for Canton. The finalists are in. We also got the senior nominees. Find out my thoughts. If you guys want, feel free and make a phone call. Go ahead. The number, once again, is 312-209-2232. Again, that number is 312-209-2232. I hope everyone's having a decent week. Other than that, I want to gauge your thoughts right now as we continue to move along. As updated by Mike Tomlin in his weekly press conference, which was last Tuesday, significant update that was made was that regarding Ben Roethlisberger was that they ain't going to find out any progress on his surgery and where he stands at as far as his recovery timeline around first week of February to see where they can start going from there. And I'm sure you got to imagine right now, a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, he's got to be in the stages right now, maybe doing some light stretching, maybe some light exercise prior to that You got to imagine it's got to be a little stiff because remember, they repaired the round 3 ligaments in his elbow, from what I heard, and listening to everything. And it's definitely been an interesting season right now. I mean, he finished things up. I mean, like I said, when you also look at it too, I think with a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, I was always on the mindset that even like this past year, I would love to just see Mike Tomlin take his team to the playoffs just to eliminate further doubt any critics he had coming his way. And just for the simple fact, because now he can really prove that just clinching the playoffs alone, I think will squashed almost all doubt. I mean, certainly, I mean, if, in my opinion, if you ask me, I just think just by doing it without Ben Roethlisberger is a huge thing. He's always been tied with his success with Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, mainly, aside from the team that he inherited coming in when he first took the job as Steelers head coach back in 2007. Because let's be honest, Ben Roethlisberger does have a lot of good weighted value with the Steelers franchise over the years. And it's funny when we look at it about a year ago and some of the way he was like leading with his team was coming out controversially, especially with teammates around him. But we realized just how important he is to this franchise. I mean, just all his contributions. And you can tell it's definitely going to be a sucky transition without Ben Roethlisberger. Let's say they'll figure something out quick. I mean, you got to really find out right now. What we need to start identifying right now with the Steelers is their offense. I mean, you pretty much got the defense right now. But again, nothing is ever promised in those areas. I mean, you got to think right now, too. I mean, it's like, how are you going to do something right now? And I got a little suggestion right here, too, from Twitter, who tweeted out earlier. I'm talking about none other than Andrew Filipponi, who's also one of the hosts on 93.7 The Fan. He can be followed on Twitter at the Pony Express. And one of his tweets he was talking about, because I think he's on the Pony and Muller show in the afternoons, but he was saying his bold prediction for Steelers trade idea is to trade Juju Smith-Schuster to the Bills or Patriots for a first-round pick. Buffalo is number 22 in the first round. New England is pick number 23. Who says no? Realistic for everyone involved. Let that sink in for a minute. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Feel free to make a comment on that. Again, he can be followed on Twitter at the Pony Express as we take a look at it. And yeah, I think you got to look at it right now. With the Steelers going into this year without a first-round pick, and when you really look at it, I mean, their situation, too, I mean, you got to look at all options on the table here, obviously. And he is part of the PM team with Paulie Miller, so that's the show right there. But when I also look at it, too, I mean, as far as the Steelers with their draft positioning this year, it's definitely going to be very interesting in that regard. Because just to recap how the Steelers are looking going into this year's draft, this is how it all sets up for them. So remember, they traded their first-round pick to the Miami Dolphins to get the Mika Fitzpatrick sweepstakes. So they're going to get the 18th spot in the first round, which the Steelers would have had if they would not trade for him. But here are their picks that they do have. They're going to be having a 49th overall in the second round of the draft. And then their next pick will be in the fourth round, which is 117th from the Dolphins and Titans. And then you're going to have a fifth-round pick, which came from the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's 137th overall. And then last but not least, you're going to have two seventh-round picks. So 197 and 210. So again, you're going to be having the second-round pick, 49th overall, fourth round at 117th, fifth at 137th, and two seventh-round picks, which would be 197 and 210. And that's where they stand at. And to be honest with you, too, I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, I think the biggest thing you got to look at, I mean, obviously he was not as clutch as he was. I mean, the first couple of years. When you look at the fact that this guy had to deal with a knee injury aside from a concussion, and not having Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, it's a little bit tougher when you see him, when you see any receiver deal with an inexperienced quarterback. I mean, at this position. I just feel like right now, I mean, if Ben Roethlisberger is able to come back, I think that's going to be the big key thing real quick. If you look at like the progress, how Ben Roethlisberger is feeling, do the Steelers entertain the idea of trading someone like a Juju Smith-Schuster? I mean, do you try and get some value out of him while you can? I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, I mean, for the most part, I mean, he still had 552 yards. I mean, 42 receptions. And it was definitely a big transition for everybody, especially when you elect to pretty much finish the season with Duck Hodges. But you could probably arguably had Mason Rudolph in there, if not for your own lineman stumbling on you. Talking about BJ Finney. I mean, you got to look at all that stuff right there. I just feel Juju Smith-Schuster, I love his effort. I love his attitude. I love his intensity. But at the same time, too, you also got to realize, too, at the end of the day, I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, unless he has a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, I think the ceiling is only going to go so high for him. That's where you got to really look at the straight and narrow for this guy. I mean, I'm not too like keen the idea like trading to the Patriots, but I mean, at the same time, if they're going to give you something like about a year ago, I think they tried offering that for Antonio Brown, and the Steelers declined. You may have to look at it like this year. And that's one of the greatest points that Andrew Filipponi was making at 93.7 The Fan, is that the fact that you do need to look at how you're getting your future ready. I mean, do you guys see right now enough out of like a James Washington and a Deontay Johnson right now? I mean, just for his first year alone being on an all-pro team in his rookie year. Granted, it's on the second team, but still, I mean, that is very impressive right there. I mean, when you think about things overall, I mean, you had James Washington lead his team in yards with 735 yards, and he did come up third in receptions with 44 on the team. But I mean, Deontay Johnson had the most catches, so you got to look at it in those respects. And like they always say, your best ability is your availability. What do you guys think? Do you guys think the Steelers should entertain the idea of trading Juju Smith-Schuster and try and see if you get a first-round pick? I think you definitely have to look at it real hard in the mirror right now, because a lot of people, there are going to still be some flustered fans thinking, like, how'd you let that slip away? I always still applaud the trade of Minka Fitzpatrick, but I got to believe right now, too, with the knowing certainty of what's going to happen with a guy like Kevin Cowher, I mean, nothing's for certain. But yeah, I think right now, if he decides to walk away, I mean, the biggest key thing is leaving the Steelers in a good position before he walks away. And obviously, I mean, for a guy who's been there for 20 seasons and been one of the well-respected GMs in this league, alone for the Steelers, I think you have to play out all options. You got to be ready for all circumstances. And I just don't feel like you want to turn a blind eye on anything. I think you just got to be very careful. I mean, at this point, I mean, how do you like win like fans back or trust by other than like I said, making a splash move like that? I mean, just to entertain it. Like I said, I think if Ben Roethlisberger, if he feels like lousy or hardly any chance, or he's even going to think about hanging it up, I think you definitely have to think long and hard about Juju Smith-Schuster's value. How's he going to be on a younger quarterback on a consistent basis, yet alone with Ben Roethlisberger? It helps to have a veteran presence in this role. Or yet alone, do the Steelers even try and trade for a veteran quarterback? Again, the number is 312 209-2232. Again, that number to be reached is 312-209-2232. You can also, again, follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richey, at Masteel CJR, Instagram, Masteel Nation, my YouTube channel, Men of Steel Podcast. And let's take a look at it right now. As the Steelers right now, for the time being, if 2020 were to hit, they'd be having about close to $5 million in cap space for the time being. So you definitely got a lot of options we got to look into here. And let's take a look at some of those free agent options right now, because obviously Mike Tomlin stated that the Steelers want to make their priority is keeping Bud Dupree around. They want to make him their priority. That's the biggest thing you have to look at in the whole nutshell at the end of the day. I mean, for a guy on this team, I mean, for the Steelers, who came second in the team in sacks with 11.5, and you look at it right now, I mean, you got Bud Dupree, who, by the way, on this team, when you really think about it, I mean, because remember, they picked up his fifth-year option, and his money that he collected this past season, he had $9.2 million that was guaranteed to him. So basically, he's without contract for right now. What do you do at this point in time? And here's some options we could go over, we could explore with the Steelers free agency options right now. You got one guy in Anthony Chickillo right now, who's one of your backup linebackers, going to count $6 million towards cap this season and could potentially save $5 million by cutting Chickillo. What do you guys think? Do you guys feel like right now, if they're able to keep, I mean, it's wiser to get rid of a guy like Chickillo, especially when they sign a guy like Tuzar Skipper, who would become an exclusive rights free agent, but he got signed to a future reserve contract for $500,000. So, do you guys feel that Tuzar Skipper, his sign spelled the end of Anthony Chickillo? I would think so, and I think one of the things you also have to look at too. I mean, at this point, I mean, he also had that domestic case that got dropped. I mean, I believe he got put on the commissioner exempt list very short term, but he wasn't on there for long. But when we also look at it too, for this time, I mean, is he really worth the guy you want to keep on this team? I mean, Chickillo. He only had half a sack this year, and he had 11 combined tackles on the team, which is nowhere near in the top 10. Obviously, I mean, for a guy like Chickillo, when you look at his overall production, his contributions to the Steelers, I mean, when you look at things, I mean, it's been a very down year as far as tackles. He had 11 total, but I mean, a lot of people would argue too. I think he had to be due to that suspension. And just only having 5 solo tackles for the year. I just feel when you look at it, a guy like Chickillo is probably not a guy who's reliable long run. I mean, this is basically your 6th-round pick from 2015. And he's definitely stayed around and made some good contributions. But I got to think you got to look at some other pieces coming up here. Yeah. I mean, the name of the game right now is trying to keep Bud Dupree right here. I think Steelers, I mean, everyone's coming to the realization of how good he is and how he could develop and how he could possibly go to the next level to keep this defense at the level with the impact and splash plays you continue to make for periods of time. I definitely say you probably have to move on from Chickillo at this point. I just don't see him being that much and help. But another guy, too, when you look at, too, Alejandro Villanueva, he returns for final 2 years of his contract. Right now, I mean, he's probably a guy who probably be gone at this point in time. I gotta think that's one guy. This is coming from Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, and you look at it too. I mean, his predictions. I mean, this is a lot of his free agency notes when he was on the Fan last week. The guys that he definitely sees gone on here, definitely Ramon Foster, he's still got one more season left. This coming season, it's up to the Steelers right now if they're gonna want to move on from Ramon Foster here. I mean, Ramon Foster going into this year. I mean, who's gonna be right now? Who is 34 years old. And for this guy coming up this year, I mean, he's going to be counting at least for this season about over $5.5 million towards the cap. If they are able to release him, you can save like about $4 million by releasing him. Like I say, he's 34 years old currently, I want to say at the moment, or will be. But I mean, that's one guy you gotta consider right there. I mean, it's I mean, like looking at his decisions, not the funnest thing in the world, but you gotta look at who is gonna be more consistent for the long run. I mean, for this team. I mean, Ramon Foster has, I mean, done a well job. I mean, with the Steelers at left guard, and it's just been an incredible gem, I think, for a lot of years. I mean, help building an offensive line under the tutelage of a guy like Mike Munchak. I just feel like Foster for this point in time, he just definitely does a lot of stuff, a lot of intangibles, but what's going to really do as far as like in the end, where it's like where the Steelers are going to just move on from him. Remember, he represents one of the players union, and for Ramon Foster, I mean, having his career overall, he's never been a Pro Bowler, never been an All-Pro. Sure, he got some strikes against you, but I mean, still, I mean, he was a contributor, but nothing much really like the dependable. I mean, for a few more years, you want to keep running the risk on. I believe, and I just feel with Ramon, it's gonna have to be something at the last moment, if you ask me. I don't know if they're gonna want to see what they gotta do here, but he's gonna be turning 34 tomorrow, so his birthday will be. But yeah, let's keep all that stuff in mind for the time being. Once again, the number that we reach, you guys want to dial in, please feel free to dial in. I'm welcome to taking your phone calls. It's 312-209-2232. Again, that number is 312-209-2232. You can always follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richey, at MassSteelCJR, Instagram, Mass Steel Nation, of course, my YouTube channel, Mass Steel Podcast. Some other free agent options you also got to look at, too. I mean, right now, Vance McDonald, right now, who has appeared and started in 14 starts for this season, he's going to be carrying a cap hit of $7.1 million. Steelers could potentially save $5.7 million in that. So Vance McDonald right now, I mean, another guy we have to take a look at here on the Steelers offense. I mean, right now, I mean, do you really feel confident right now where you go for a guy like Zach Gentry or pick someone up in free agency to help out, I mean, with this tight end position? Because other than that, you got Nick Vannett right here, who's going to be turning 27 years old, I believe, this season. And you got to ask yourself right now, I mean, you guys have not had a legitimate tight end in a long while since they had like Keith Miller. So those are things to consider right there. Definitely got a lot of question marks to get into. But let's get ready to transition right now away from the free agency notes right now as we're looking on this. I mean, of course, like I said, the only other guy that's notable adding on here for the Steelers, I mean, you got to think about is Ben Roethlisberger. He's going to be counting $33.5 million towards the salary cap, and that's according to overthecap.com. And if he released or is decides to retire, I think right now you got a cap saving $8.5 million, and $25 million would be like dead money in that regard. And I'm not sure you want to be going through that right now, especially a guy who just extended last year on the day of the draft, or like day before, I should say. Excuse me. So I mean, you definitely got a lot of options, not the prettiest of options, but options nonetheless. So let's get into it. Let's get into the All Pro team for 2020. And like I said, you had a guy like T.J. Watt, and then you had Cam Hayward and Mika Fitzpatrick as your first team All Pros. Your fourth All Pro member was Deontay Johnson. And you got Deontay Johnson. He led all rookies in receptions with 59, 49th overall as far as ranking, 6th in punt return yards with 248, second amongst rookies, and 6th in punt return touchdowns with 1, second amongst rookies. And of course, when we look at the NFL All-Pro team going into this year for that, and I think it was Deontay Harris of the Saints that beat him out. And this was being written by Brian Diardo of CBS Sports. You can follow on Twitter at Brian Diardo. And as far as like the special teams on the offense here, when we look at it, the guy that did beat out Deontay Johnson. Oh, here we go. I got a phone call coming in. Good evening, it's Charles Richey of the Best Deal Podcast. Who's this?
This is Brian Diardo.
Hey, what's going on, Brian? Welcome to the Best Deal Podcast. How's you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. I saw you were kicking off a show and figured I'd join in and see if there was anything that was pressing your mind in terms of the Steelers and the news today that Randy Fichtner will likely be staying with the team next year.
Well, like I said, right now, I mean, it's definitely, I think, likely. I think just only for the fact that Mike Tomlin is still loyal to his coaching staff. I mean, I haven't really got like an indication from him other than the fact from last week's press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we got Brian Diardo. Speaking of which, who's just joined me live here on the Mass Deal Podcast. You can follow him up on Twitter at Brian Diardo of CBS Sports. And Mike Tomlin, let's not forget, he did say that he was open to coaching changes if necessary. I mean, in that regard. I mean, I think I heard Didi Kinkwala of NFL Network was one of the people who I didn't get a chance to verify, but it sounds like he's going to stick around. And I'm wondering if you're thinking in this mindset, but do you think he's also kind of doing like what he did with Keith Butler and bring in Terrell Austin Sr., a guy from the University of Pittsburgh, a guy who had coaching experience as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. I mean, you look at what he did as far as assisting, I think, with Butler on the defensive side of the ball, gave him one of the most respectable defense you haven't seen in a long time as far as takeaways. Do you think you see something similar happening to that with Randy Fichtner? They decided to keep him long simply because they also still need a quarterback coach.
Well, that's it, Charles, what you just said. I think they're going to bring in a quarterback coach. The question is going to be who. And I noticed it watching the playoffs last night. I'm not a fan of NFL head coaches that also serve as offensive coordinators. I think you've got too much on your plate already, and I think it looks better during a game if you're a game manager. If you're able to observe the flow of the game without having your hands physically involved in an aspect of the game, like calling plays. Conversely, Tomlin's a defensive-minded coach. I'm happy he's not the defensive coordinator, but he can chime in when necessary and make adjustments with Keith Butler. So to answer your question, I think they're going to bring in a quarterbacks coach. I don't think, when Ben's your starting quarterback and he's worked with Fichtner since, 07 in various roles he's had with the team, you don't necessarily need a quarterbacks coach. When you do need one is when Ben gets hurt. Obviously, again, regardless of whether or not they have a QB coach or not, Fichtner's going to work closely with the quarterbacks because he's obviously the OC. But I think it does help if you've got another QB coach in the room that's also talking to the quarterbacks to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then in practice, if Finkner needs to talk to the running backs, he needs to talk to the receivers or whoever it is, or Coach Tomlin, or maybe he needs to spend extra time with Ben because, Ben's the starting quarterback. You've got that extra, face there. And that's why I didn't understand why they didn't bring in a new QB coach. My best guess was, A, because Finkner already was one. He already has a rapport with Ben and the other quarterbacks. Right. And maybe they didn't see anybody out there that was worth bringing in. I mean, I don't know if it would be a good idea, but maybe Freddie Kitchens would be a terrible idea. He obviously, knows how to work with quarterbacks. I think, and this again, Charles, goes back to my overall point. I think you're asking for trouble when you're a first-year head coach and you're also trying to call plays and be the team's offensive or quarterback coach. I thought that was one of Kitchens' issues. I think if he would have just stuck to being a head coach, letting somebody else call the plays, I think he would have been much better served in Cleveland. But yeah, that's what I think will happen. And I think it's a good idea that Finkner's coming back. That being said, you can't really defend the fact that Pittsburgh was, bottom 5 in the league in rushing the last 2 years. I know they've had injuries with James Conner, and I know that Snell had a couple of good games this year, but that's an indictment against Finkner that can't be defended, is the fact that their running game has been one of the worst in the league the last couple of years.
Well, don't forget, too, and the reason why I bring up like a similar comparison, like I said, with Terrell Austin Sr., I mean, with Randy Finkner, I know there's been a lot of frustration. I mean, granted, too, he also doesn't help the fact, too, that Mike Munchak, who also instilled a lot of attitude in that offensive line, will help creating a lot of running lanes for the running game, too. I think that has to work hand in hand with that. I mean, that's another big speculation right there. I would agree with you to a point, but only, like I said, you have to remember, like I said, Sean Surratt, who I thought did, I'll give him probably a C-plus job this year, only because he helped protect the quarterback real well. The only problem was what we're seeing when you have inexperienced quarterbacks in there right now. I mean, a guy like undrafted or drafted between guys like Mason Rudolph and then, of course, Devlin Hodges. Sometimes your rhythm gets a little bit thrown off right there, and then trying to create blocking lanes for guys to break open. I felt like that was a big element factor in that. But I think with Randy Finkner, just to go back, do you see him doing a similar role with Keith Butler, where he's still somewhat running the offense, but he's also taking a step back as focusing what brought him to the dance as a quarterback coach?
Right, and again, I wrote about this today. I mean, they went from having the league's best red zone offense in 18 to the league's worst. And how much of that has been? Probably a lot of it. And I think there's other things that Finkner had nothing to do with. And all right, I think everybody can agree that Coach Tomlin had a very strong season coaching. The fact that, yes, the 3-game losing streak at the end was bad, but the fact they were even in that position where they needed a win and a loss by the Titans to make the playoffs after a 1-4 start, that's pretty remarkable, with the quarterbacks and the other injuries they had. But I thought the Buffalo game was really mismanaged. Not just the game and the fact that they ran 14 times. And I want to say at that point Buffalo was 14th in the league against the run, which, nothing to sniff at. But passing-wise, they were 3rd in the league in pass defense. They finished 4th. So the fact they threw way more than they ran was a red flag for me. But during the week, Mike Tomlin said that following Tuesday when asked about why they ran 14 times and the turnovers of Duck. And Tomlin said that one of the issues they had was during the week, the division of labor between the running backs in practice wasn't equally distributed, which also hurt during the game with the pass protection because they had certain running backs in at certain points that maybe shouldn't have been in for pass protection. Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, whoever. But and that's all centered on James Conner. They weren't sure how much he could play. So he got probably a decent amount of the reps, which then that hurt how much reps Samuels got and Snell got. So then when Conner obviously couldn't, work as much as he wanted to on Sunday because his pitch count was low, he didn't have a lot of touches. Then all of a sudden they weren't sure about the preparedness of the other running backs. So they kind of mismanaged that running back position. And actually, Charles, going into that game, I actually think they were better off without Conner. Or they should have went in saying, okay, we're only going to use Connor for these amount of plays unless he's really healthy. But let's just assume we're only going to have him for 15 snaps. And then if we have him for more late in the game, that's a bonus. Because I think that the fact they weren't clear and they didn't have a clear plan with Connor, at least from the outside, I think that really hurt them. Because Hodges' best performances was when he had Snell as his starting running back. The Chargers game, the Bengals game, even the Ravens game, even though it turned into a blowout. I mean, Snell ran well. They had the lead near close to the end of the half before things got away from them. I think when Connor came back in, maybe even Juju, because again, Hodges was used to not having Juju. I think when Juju and Connor came back, I think that actually hurt the offense more than it helped the offense.
No,
and that has nothing to do with Tomlin or with Finkner. That has to do with Tomlin and personnel and those things.
And see, with Tomlin, too, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to discount the fact that he did a remarkable job. I think the only thing that gets a little concerning right here, too, I mean, to your point, when you talk about bringing a guy like James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, here's the thing you got to look at that point in time. You pretty much back in Week 15 had a scenario, I mean, since the Titans lost that day to the Texans, you win your next two games, you beat us after Week 16, basically at that point. My thing is, I think the only like striking detriment I will say against Tomlin and the coaching staff is that when you're in a position like this to control your own destiny, and I understand what they've been trying to do all year long. They try to move on from the mentality of running to the breaks, fall off on the running back. They split the carries, but I'm in closeout mode at this point. I want to at least ride someone down the stretch, kind of like how they did Jerome Bettis back like in 2005. I'm not saying
on in 16.
Yeah, no, I get that, but what I'm saying is, I mean, you saw how Bay Snow was heating up down the stretch. I mean, with this team, especially where it was against the Browns game right there, and just everything. I mean, he was a guy that was heating up. I mean, when I look at this guy, I think this is someone you could have definitely given the ball a little bit more to and will let finish. I just feel like for a guy who collected 426 yards, 2 touchdowns, I mean, and not that he just had a lot of stuff going for them. He had the intimidation going for him. I mean, even with his little mouthpiece, that little spinning propeller, whatever. I'm just thinking if I'm gonna finish what I gotta do, I'm gonna go to someone like a closer who closes.
And he may have been dealing with injuries or the rookie wall. I'm pretty positive he was dealing with the rookie wall. I remember being at the game in Buffalo. He came off the field once and looked a little gimpy to me. I'm not saying he played with an injury, but those are things that we don't know. And those are the things that you have to trust that the coaching staff is playing the right people. And that's the issue, Charles, when we're in this business. We can only assume or guess. We don't know for sure. But I'm imagining that Benny was maybe less than 100% down the stretch, at least during at some point in that Bills game. But again, you look at the offense against the Chargers. You look at the week before against the Ravens. You look at, once they started to heat up against the Dolphins, because they started that game awful, if people remember. Even the Browns game. I mean, that offense was in sync. That offense was moving. They had misdirection. When the traditional running game wasn't working, they were doing end arounds to Deontay, and they were finding other ways to get yards. They were getting Juju involved in the short rush game. I didn't see any of that creativity late in the season. I saw the offense get very vanilla. I saw the offense get very bland, predictable.
Yes.
And really, with the Charger game, I remember specifically, Hodges is better out on the run, on the play action, when you're going to give him a receiver, a tight end, and maybe even a running back. There was none of that, or very, very little of that. And my big question mark, too, is Jalen Samuels had a really big game catching the ball against the Colts, I believe, midway through the season. And then after that, he finished with close to 50 catches. But I don't remember him being a significant threat in the passing game the rest of the season. And that, to me, is a red flag. Because, again, everybody remembers that 140-plus yard game against New England in Week 15 of the 18 season. That game now has become an anomaly. I mean, Samuels probably hasn't had half of that rushing total in any game since. So, in my opinion, he had a disappointing season. again, I think this is the main reason why, and I wonder if you agree, Charles. I think the main reason why they're bringing Finkner back, A, he's under contract. B, he knows the team. C, him and Tomlin go back over 20 years, back to Arkansas State in 1998. But I think the other thing is, I think, they didn't have Ben. They had lost Brown. Connor was hurt. Juju was hurt. They're playing with practice squad guys, a practice squad quarterback. I just feel like everybody's mostly just getting a pass this season because of the fact that they didn't have Ben. And, they were able to turn nothing into something for a while. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to get over the hump. And that was my biggest fear about the team going into December and why I didn't think they could win more than 9 games. Because, and this is where people have underappreciated Ben in the past. Ben's ability to win tough games in December on the road, I think, is what has made him the Hall of Fame quarterback he is, and why the Steelers haven't had a losing season since he's been their quarterback. The Cincinnati game in 16,
right?
The 15 game in Cleveland, they needed to win to make the playoffs, and they needed a Jets loss. There's so many of those games on the road in Ohio or wherever in December that Ben has pulled off with the help of his teammates. That you didn't have that moxie this year. You saw Josh Allen do that. You saw Sam Darnold do that. You even saw RG3 do that. You didn't see our young quarterbacks do that. And I think the Steelers season started to take a downward turn when Mason that Cleveland game. And I think that Mason was rushed back too quick. I think that Earl Thomas concussion, I don't think he should have been back on the field after just one game. He probably needed 2 games. I think he got rushed back in. I don't think he was ready to play in that next game, and I think it was exposed against Cleveland. And that's why Tomlin, I think, made it very clear during his conference that Mason's the number 2, because I think that Mason needs that reassurance going into the offseason. And I think that it's important that Tomlin lets the fan base know and the media know that, hey, it wasn't the greatest season for Mason, but he did show some promise. And I think Mason took a lot more flack than he deserved, especially after that hit from Earl Thomas. The Steelers were leading the Ravens at that point, who were 14-2 and have a playoff bye, and they might be the NFL's number 1 team. Mason Rudolph was getting the better of them before Earl Thomas cleaned his clock with an illegal hit. And I don't think Mason was the same sense. And I'm glad that Tomlin put to bed any notions that he won't be their number 2 going forward. He still could be their franchise quarterback. And Jim Wexell says a lot, his ceiling might be Neil O'Donnell, if not better. That's not Ben, but with this defense, you might not need Ben to win a Super Bowl. You might need it. And Neil O'Donnell might be good enough. So that's not a terrible thing to say if that's Mason's ceiling.
So let me ask you this then, too. Andrew Filipponi, who's also on 93.7 The Fan, he also hosts a show on during the afternoons, during the week, and I want to hear a reaction to his comment that he tweeted up there on Twitter. I'm sure you probably saw it, but his idea was for like a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster in particular, and I'm thinking this is, of course, once they find out Ben Roethlisberger's progress in the first week of February on his recovery and what they need to do workout-wise. But here's what he had to say. He's proposing trade Juju Smith-Schuster to either the Bills or Patriots for a first-round pick, simply for the fact that Buffalo's going to be number 22 and the Patriots will be 23. Remember a year ago at this point in time, the Steelers slammed the door shut when the Patriots tried offering that for Antonio Brown. And I think it was wise at that time. Obviously, you don't want to give him right away to your rival. You could probably potentially pass you in Super Bowls, but also just make you look silly. But this year, if that is the case with Ben Roethlisberger, depending like how's recovery, do you see the Steelers entertain that idea and try and see if they get a first-round pick by looking at a guy like Smith-Schuster? Your thoughts?
Have you ever seen the movie Animal House?
Something tells me I'm going to have to YouTube it later on.
Okay. So the dean I think, was it Flounder? The dean reads Flounder's GPA, and it's the same percentage that happens.
Yeah.
0.00. And the main reason why is, so in 2018, or last year, Ben loses the greatest receiver he's ever had, with all respect to Heinz Ward. He loses their player that, I mean, they were top 10 all-time in completions together and touchdown passes together, 74 and 9 years and all that, not including the playoffs. Now you're going to take away, and you took away Le'Veon Bell, who caught over 80 passes from Ben in 2 different seasons. So and now you're going to take away the guy that he had 111 completions with in 2018. There's no way. Like, you can't take away Ben's top 3 offensive weapons in 2 straight off seasons. That would be, as well as Washington played last year and as promising as Deontay looks, there's just no way you should do that to Ben. Because now you're getting rid of some. I mean, Ben and Juju have really good chemistry together, and I know that lose a lot of Juju's success, or at least a portion of it in 18, was because Antonio opened things up for him. And I know Juju struggled this season and with his health, and just when he was on the field, he didn't do a lot. But I mean, remember the New England game? Not much was going well in week 1 in that game. But Juju's stat line was pretty good. And I know that you can't just look too much into stats, but I would imagine even, if Ben plays this season and Juju is healthy, Juju's still getting at least 1,200 yards and 80, 90 catches. Like, at least, in 7 or 8 touchdowns. Is that a decline from 18? Yeah. But I think anybody would sign up for 1,200 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns, considering that Washington was their leading receiver this year with under 800 yards.
Well,
so,
in regard –
and Juju, again, is only 23 years old. He's going to be 24 next offseason. He's younger than Deontay Johnson, the Steelers' rookie this year. Yeah, you could get a first-round pick, but I don't think they need a first-round pick this year. I think that they and that also sends a message to your locker room. I mean, I don't think it sends the right one, because what has Juju done? And I know business is business, and I know that the players understand that, but what message does that send to the locker room when you have a young guy that's doing all the right things for the organization, was your team MVP in 18, and you trade him away? I think that would mess with the locker room, and I think that would hurt the team's inner chemistry. And that's the one thing I think every Steeler fan can agree with. How much do we not like the drama this season? And everybody can agree that locker room, the reason why they were in position to make the playoffs was because of the inner strength that they had. You get rid of a guy like Juju, you're saying bye-bye to a lot of Juju mention or pun and mention there. But yeah, so my opinion, I think it's a bad idea.
I get that, but I mean, I won't really be too upset with, only because at the end of the day, people do realize it's a business at the end of the day. I mean,
so you'd be okay with watching Juju Smith-Schuster win a ring with the Patriots and help Tom? The last thing that anybody would want to do is give Tom Brady a Pro Bowl receiver right now, when that's the number one thing the Patriots have. To me, it's ludicrous, and I want to see Juju Smith-Schuster retire as a Steeler. I don't want to see them trade away parts. Plus, again, you're losing someone that had 1,400 all-purpose yards in 18, 111 catches. I mean, that's one of the top 5 receiving seasons in franchise history. I don't understand why people all of a sudden are so down on Juju. He had one down season, but if everybody else on that offense is going to get a pass, why isn't Juju? I mean, why aren't we saying let's trade Villanueva? He didn't have a great season. Why aren't we saying, let's get rid of, Rosie Nix because he was hurt? Like, I don't know why all of a sudden we're, and Filippone needs to understand too, players are free agents now. Players see what media people are tweeting. Juju might just decide to leave on his own and ask for a trade. I wouldn't be surprised if he did that, because in my opinion, he's received an unbelievable amount of unwarranted criticism from the fan base this season, and I frankly don't understand it.
Yeah, I just think the biggest key in all this is it's going to be tied with Ben Roethlisberger at the end of the day. Like I said, he is obviously one of the rocks for this team, always will be, until he decides to hang it up. And I just think you got to look at it, too. I mean, the difference versus a guy like Antonio Brown before, he snapped off. But you got to look at it this way, too. It's different levels to how Antonio Brown. I think a lot of these guys could attribute some of their success to Ben Roethlisberger. He's helped make them, especially with the offensive coordinators they did, even with Todd Haley or Fiechner in the past, or Bruce Arians you can make an argument for. But what I'm saying is, I think at the end of the day, people are going to be looking at it. I mean, it's just like, how much better are we when we don't have Ben Roethlisberger? And yeah, I don't want to see the Patriots get in our Super Bowl like that. But again, I'm looking at what's best for the Steelers in the long run right now for the moment. And plus, another thing you got to look at, too, I mean, Deontay Johnson, real quickly, I was just getting ready to get into the all-pro talk. How special can we expect this kid to continue to get right now? I mean, he makes the all-pro team on the second team. I saw your list this past Friday. You got Noah down, by the way. What do you think the next steps are going to be for him as far as 2020 comes up?
Completing his routes, completing it, not the physical running routes, but just the receiving tree of being a complete receiver, catching passes over the middle, being able to take punishment. He's a blend of, he's a mix of like Emmanuel Sanders and Antonio. I think he was a better receiver at a younger age than Brown. Not as freakishly athletic. Brown was more of a deep threat early. And he's got kind of that elusiveness that Sanders had that Brown didn't have yet. And even, I still think even now, Sanders just kind of glides through defenses. Brown would zig-zag, and I think there is a difference there. Athleticism, he's blended the two. But that's another reason why you keep Juju, because if Juju is 100% healthy or whatever, and he's in there and is effective, that's going to take the attention. Like, imagine now, so remember going back all the way back to week 1 when Johnson was a young rookie and didn't know what was going on. Defenses could double team Juju, and it was like, yeah, this guy's not going to do anything. James Washington, we're not worried about him. Switzer, we're not worried about these guys. Moncrief, now with Deontay starting to come into his own, and James Washington, you can't double team Juju anymore. If you do, then Deontay's going to have a field day, or Washington, or whoever. That's another reason why Juju's so important. Also, I think Juju's game is going to age a lot better than Brown's, because Brown's game is 90% about his speed and athleticism. When you get older, you lose those things. Juju's a big physical receiver, and if you get a chance to go to training camp, you'll see it. Like, he just bullies smaller defensive backs. Juju should still, as long as his body holds up, he should still be a physical, imposing presence late in his career, like a thicker version of Julio Jones. So for a lot of reasons, I think you got to hang on to Juju, and I would pay him this offseason. If he wants to be paid, he might wait another year to get his value up. But other side of the coin, though, yeah, Deontay's he's as good as he wants to be. I mean, really. My question is, how hungry is he? He has you should look it up. He has a really colorful background at Toledo. Almost dropped out of school, had health issues, had academic issues, pulled it together, was the special teams player of the year in 2018 for the MAC. The year before helped the Rockets win the MAC title. Really had a nice career at Toledo after some adversity, and obviously was motivated to show that he could play on the NFL level. But now I want to see him go to OTAs. Now I want to see him at minicamp. I want to see him at the voluntary things. That is it. And Charles, going back to what you said at the beginning about Tomlin and the coaches and whatever, I think that they're obviously going to try to find a long-term receivers coach, because I don't know if they did find it after Drake passed. I know that the assistant that replaced him, I don't know if that's a full-time. I don't think that's a long-term move. So that's also going to be an important hiring, whoever Coach Tomlin goes with there.
Well, not only that, though, but that coach who you're alluding to, that was a receivers coach. He was the guy that coached Hines Ward, I think, like in his rookie season. And he was
the offensive coordinator. Ray Sherman was, I think that's who it was. He was the offensive coordinator in 1998, which was part of the decline of Cordell Stewart. Not entirely his fault, but that's another conversation for another day.
but at the same time, too, I mean, no offense. I mean, Ray Sherman, he was also more of a Bill Cowher guy at that time, more so than Mike Tomlin. So, I mean, think about that, too. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's ties right there to that. But I think that could somewhat offset a little bit of chemistry. It wasn't necessarily a Tomlin guy. It was someone when you have a situation like that, I was down in camp this past summer, and I can just only imagine what the emotions of that team was feeling that weekend. I mean, just watch them practice. And like I said, I think they had to think quick. I mean, for right now, I think it's definitely they got some work to do in that area. But real quickly, staying with on the All-Pro team real quickly, if you had to choose between these two names, there's two guys that come to mind. I mean, big congratulations, guys like, of course, T.J. Watt and Mika Fitzpatrick getting their first nods as first-team All-Pros. And then you also have Cam Hayward getting his second nod for the first team. If you had to choose between these two guys, and I think if not because of suspension, I think he'd be on there, Marquise Pouncey. But if you had to choose other than like Marquise Pouncey, who would you choose? I mean, for first or second team, Marquise Pouncey or Bud Dupree? Which one would you put on there for another Steeler?
You're choosing between all pros?
All pros, first or second team. If you had to put one more Steeler on there, who would you choose between Bud Dupree or Marquise Pouncey? Because Marquise Pouncey, he's got like the third most Pro Bowls in his career. What was that?
Pouncey was an All-Pro.
Who's that?
Marquise Pouncey was an All-Pro this year.
I thought he wasn't.
Yeah, he was second team. Him and DeCastro were second team. But,
okay.
But if you're asking me, should Dupree have been an All-Pro? No, I don't think he should have been an All-Pro. To me, an All-Pro is you got to be the best of the best. I don't think Dupree was the best of the best. I mean, he wasn't even.
Well, you know what? I'm actually.
Team. Dupree should have been a Pro Bowler. He absolutely should have been a Pro Bowler. No question. I think if you rank the Steeler defensive players that had the best seasons, I would go Watt 1, Minka 2, Cam probably 3, and then, I would say Dupree 4 and Hayward 5 and Steven Nelson 6. Those would be my top 6 Steeler defenders this year. And Nelson is the most underrated Steelers player, maybe on the entire team. So, Pouncey didn't have a great season by his standards, but I think his leadership and I think just him continuing – that was kind of a reputation All-Pro selection. If there's one Steeler that you could say maybe didn't deserve an All-Pro, was probably Pouncey. But Pouncey still had a great season and deserved it. But I don't think Dupree deserves to be an All-Pro. I think Pro Bowl, I'm good with that. But All-Pro is probably a stretch.
You know what? Because I'm actually double checking your list as we're talking real quick, and I'm not finding them on here. That's why I'm double checking them both first and second for some reason. Yeah, my apologies for that. I might have just overlooked it, but the reason why I bring up Bud Dupree because you got a guy right now who Mike Tomlin said they want to make him a priority. They want to keep this guy around. What do you think's more likely going to happen? Do you think it's going to be more of a franchise tag before you do a long-term extension? Or do you think they go ahead, release a few guys, maybe like a Mark Barron, and find a way to get extra money for Dupree to keep him around?
I would tag him because, and I think he would take the tag. I mean, that's going to pay him $16 million. That would be $25.2 million for him over 2 years. I mean, that's pretty good. And he would still be young enough. He'd be, I think, 28 next year.
Right.
He would still get another nice, maybe 3 or 4 year deal. But I think they'll try to work out a contract. It just depends on how much Dupree's going to demand and how much is he going to want to test the open market. The going rate for an outside linebacker, I think is 12 or 13 million. His level, a Pro Bowl caliber outside linebacker. So I can see them, but this is the massive but. You have to pay Watt. Watt's deal is the number one, I think, Tomlin did say that Dupree is among their top priorities. So
yeah, but I think you could also argue T.J. Watt is another guy you could probably offer the franchise tag as well. Because remember, you got to
give him a deal after what he did. I would agree with you if he didn't have the major season that he had.
But
he had last year.
But the only reason I'm saying that, I'm just saying because Dupree did get drafted a year ahead of him, and this is a guy who could potentially walk. And I'm just saying, I think because with the benefit of a guy like T.J. Watt being drafted in that first round, you get that fifth-year option. I'm not trying to take a swipe at a guy like T.J. Watt, but I'm just also trying to say real quickly, let's try not to cut too many of our losses so swift. If I could do something for the time being, that's all I'm saying right now.
Right, but there's no way Watt's going to agree to that. His agent's going to say, "Hey, my client has outperformed his contract. He needs a new one." And the Steelers are going to have to do it. And I don't think there's any way against it. Like in an ideal world, Watt would just be cool with the 5th-year option and everything, and all is good. Maybe Watt will sacrifice for the team, but that's asking a lot of someone to sacrifice. Playing one more year with the rookie contract versus getting a new deal right now that would include, I would imagine, some nice guaranteed money. And his agent probably won't let him do it. His agent will probably say, "Hey, man, like you outperformed your contract, you need a new one." So that's why I think they're going to have to tag Bud. They're going to get Watt his new contract. And then next year, we'll see if Bud will play ball. And if he doesn't, then and I think regardless, you got to bring in another outside linebacker. I would part with Chickalo. I don't know. I liked Barron this year. It would be unfortunate to see him go unless they could find someone else like him that they could plug in. But I think losing Barron would hurt, personally. But if they have to, they have to. I understand that. But yeah, I think regardless, you draft an outside linebacker and you see what you have, because there's a high possibility they're not going to have Dupree next year. And again, you also have Juju's contract kind of dangling out there too. And I don't know what they're going to do, because they got Watt. The 3 biggest contracts on the team right now are Watt, Juju, and Dupree. And I don't know which contracts are going to get done or not. I can guarantee that Watts is going to get done. I don't know if they're going to have enough money to do both Watt and Juju, though.
I got to tell you what, just to add to TJ Watt and his agent, you also got to believe darn sure that his brother JJ Watt, who's been in the league for a long time, he's going to probably give him some good pointers and some advice about how to approach things as a businessman coming to the table. Look for a deal.
Well, no doubt. And Watt will probably get paid among the highest outside linebackers in the league. You have to look at, what Von Miller's making. Watt's arguably the best outside linebacker in football right now. So he's going to get paid a lot. It's been a long time since the Steelers defensive player has been able to demand that type of money. And that, if you look at the grand scheme, that's why probably losing Le'Veon and Antonio Antonio for a lot of reasons, but, just in terms of money, parting with him and Bell the last last offseason was probably a blessing in disguise, because at that point, you've got to give money to Ben, you've got to give money to those two. They would have had little money to give to that defense. So I think overall, because you have less firepower on offense, you're going to be able to pay guys more. And I understand that the parting with Juju in terms of money and whatever, but I just think he's too valuable to their offense, and I'm not ready to send him away after one disappointing season, especially when it came in a year where there were so many issues on that offense, not just him.
All right. Well, hey, Kite, you got a few more seconds real quickly,
Yeah.
Just to do one last topic real quick, if you don't mind. Just a few questions on. All right. Well, hey, thank you again for calling in, by the way. And again, sorry for pointing out in the article right there, but it's always enjoy the talks, my man, with you.
No doubt.
So let's go to the Hall of Fame right now. Let's start off with the Steelers right now. You got 4 guys all together pretty much here. You got 2 modern era guys, and Troy Polamalu, Alan Faneca. Heinz Ward misses it once again this year. But then you also got, for your senior finalists, you got Bill Cowher, and of course, Donnie Shell has been the biggest senior a lot of his ex-teammates have been vouching for. Over under 2 Hall of Famers that the Steelers will get in Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, I think that Polamalu is going to get in. It's not a 100% lock, but it's about as a sure thing as you can get. And so I think Polamalu is going to get in. Faneca, it'll probably come down to him or Tony Vaselli. That's going to be tough. And you also have to factor in that voters are already leery about how many Steelers are already in the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, Faneca has to get in at some point. His career demands it. I don't know if they're going to make him wait another year. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards this is the year he gets in. I did actually have a prediction on CBS.com where I predict all 20 members of this year's class. But I think that if Faneca gets in, I'll go ahead and give him the lean. I think Faneca makes it. I think he's the best offensive lineman, maybe not in the Hall of Fame right now that's eligible. Just ahead of Baselli. Baselli was great, but didn't have the longevity that Faneca had, or the Super Bowl ring that Faneca has. Polamalu gets in. I don't think that Donnie Shell makes it. I don't know if any more 70 Steelers will, and I think that there's 3 more. I think there's 4 that are deserving.
Elsie Greenwood will be one of them.
Honor last year. Donnie, Andy Russell, and Elsie Greenwood. I think Donnie has the best chance, and I give the Steelers website a lot of credit because they really are pushing to get Donnie in, and Bill Cowher. They had a little argument for Bill Cowher, who I don't think he'll make it this year, but I like the fact they're putting up a fight for him. They haven't really in years past, but I think 2 Steelers make it. I think it's going to be Faneca, and I think it's going to be Polamalu. I wouldn't be surprised though if Shell made it. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because I think Tony Dungy has been very vocal about how he should be included. As I said, the Steelers website has done a lot of things. A lot of his former teammates lately have come out. I know Mel Blunt and Franco Harris have for the Steelers website. So there's more awareness around Shell's case now than in recent memory. So I'll say 2.5 Steelers make it. You can take the over and the under. I'm going to take the under there. But if I was a betting man and I had to set the Steelers over-under of Hall of Famers this year, I'll say 2.5. But regardless, there's going to be a reason for Steeler fans to make it out to Canton. I will be there this year. I was there when Bettis got in, and I went the next year when Kevin Green got in. And I will be there. It's only 2 hours away from where I live, so I'll be there. But I don't think Cowher makes it. I think there's a few other coaches whose resumes are just a little stronger. I don't know how I do not know how Jimmy Johnson's not in the Hall of Fame. His career is short, relatively speaking, for a head coach. But I mean, the job he did in Dallas, and look at what Dallas has done since he left. I don't know how he's not in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I don't think Russell will ever make it, unfortunately, and I don't think Greenwood will either. Maybe Shell eventually, and I think Ward will make it eventually. There's a backlog of receivers. Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt of the Greatest Show on Turf, just to name a few. Even you go back to Cliff Branch, it's a sin that he's not in the Hall of Fame. It's an absolute sin. I think if I had to make an all not Hall of Fame team, Cliff Branch is my receiver. And Drew Pearson from the 70s too. I can't believe those guys aren't in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, Charles, I think 2 Steelers make it. Wouldn't be shocked if the 3rd one made it.
Well, I'm going to definitely say I'm going to probably go take a little over the 2.5, and I'll go the 3 altogether. So I will go with Troy Polamalu for sure. And the reason why I say Polamalu right now, when you look at his current there of finalists, this is complete body of work. He's the only guy on there that's not only is a Pro Bowler with 8, 4-time All-Pro. He's also got 2 championships, plus none of the players on defense within the past 25 years, which falls into that minor category, has Defensive Player of the Year but him. So when I look at that, I'm looking at the complete body work. He checks all those boxes right there. I mean, again, it's not a lock. I realize it's a little screwy at times. But again, when you look at, when you consider, what Bob Papiani told me when I called in on one of his shows about a couple months ago on Thanksgiving weekend, was that a lot of stuff you see him jumping over the line of scrimmage or making these tackles or these turnovers, you're not always necessarily see on a stat sheet, but he does have just as much about respectable amount of interceptions and tackles. So I think for that reason he gets in. Plus Alan Faneca I would choose over Baselli just simply because of the Pro Bowls that he's got and the All-Pros. I mean, he's got 9 or 6 on there. For that. For a guy like Faneca, who's definitely waited a long time, and he's got 9 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros. He's got a few more than Baselli. And then I would say Bill Cowher. When you look at Cowher, the funny thing is, when you look at as far as career wins, he's got the 3rd most career wins behind guys in Dan Reeves and Mike Holmgren. But then his win percentage in career wins is 1st with 6.2 win percent. And then for a guy who's struggled in the playoffs up until he had that 05 run where he finally had a winning postseason record, This guy's got the second most postseason victories of all the coaches. I understand what Jimmy Johnson's done, but at the same time, too, I mean, and look how long the Cowboys suffered. Bill Cowher's had more longevity. Grant spent only with one team, and for him stepping away from the game and not coming back as long as he did, I think that's probably a reason why people are hesitant on Cowher. But I'll put him in there with Troy Polamalu, no doubt, and Faneca is a long shot.
Well, I think Cowher's 2-4 record in AFC Championship games is the main reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame. But I would say this in defense of that. I mean, how many times were the Steelers the favored team and lost? They were favored. The 94 loss to the Chargers was kind of inexcusable. But, I mean, San Diego's defense was very good, but that loss was inexcusable. That's the worst loss of his career. He's even said that.
The 94 one.
Shows. Yes. 97, Denver was favored, even though Pittsburgh beat them in the regular season. I mean, they lost to a Hall of Fame quarterback, John Elway, Hall of Fame running back, Charles Davis, Hall of Fame tight end, Shannon Sharp, Neil Smith, Steve Atwater. I mean, that Denver team was pretty legendary. They ended up winning it again the next year. So I don't fault Cowher really for that game. It was just, Cordell threw 3 interceptions in the second half and also had a fumble. I mean, they had 4 turnovers in that game and lost by a field goal. You look at 2001, the New England game. At the time, that was a really ugly loss, but I mean, New England's turned into New England. The 94 AFC Championship game, that was Ben's rookie season. He had hit the rookie wall. They had struggled the week before against the Jets. They shouldn't even have won that game. So I'm not a Cowher apologist, but now that we've had time to kind of look at those losses, really the only one that's ugly is the Chargers one. And you look at the Super Bowl, I mean, they should have beat – I mean, if the Steelers beat Dallas in Super Bowl 30, Cowher's in the Hall of Fame already. I mean, he doesn't have to win another ring, I don't think. I think the win against Seattle helps, obviously. But if they beat Dallas in that Super Bowl, I mean, we're not even discussing this right now. I mean, Cowher's already in a jacket, and he's got his bust, and he's in. I think that's the most underappreciated – one of the most underappreciated coaching performances in Super Bowl history. I don't think Lee Eubank gets enough credit for his game plan in Super Bowl 3. I think Coach Knoll had some great game plans in the Super Bowls Pittsburgh won. I don't think Cowher gets credit for. I mean, Dallas had a lot more talent in that game, and the Steelers almost beat them. And that would have been one of the greatest upsets in Super Bowl history. But I don't think Cowher makes it. Maybe at one point, because I think the further along we get from his career, I think it's appreciated more. And I think his shortcomings are more understood because we have context now to compare with. I mean, 2 of his losses were against the Patriots, and I don't think people are going to fault him for that.
And last 2 real quickly, just to wrap up here. Who do you see advancing right now? Let's swing things over to the NFL playoffs. Right now, we got the divisional round. Definitely been a weekend of upsets right there. I mean, I love the Texans win, and Kirk Cousins finally get his first victory. I mean, that was my second favorite victory, aside from being a Steelers fan. But then the Titans upsetting the Patriots. I mean, then the Seahawks. But I got to tell you, it was a great first round of wild cards to start off the playoffs. Who do you got advancing to the conference tournament this year?
Let's take a look.
So I'll help you out. So we got the 49ers. They're going to be hosting the Vikings in the NFC. And then the other side of it, you're going to be having the Packers host the Seahawks. They're going to have the Chiefs hosting the Texans, who the Texans beat.
I like the 49ers in a close one. I like the Chiefs, even though they have such bad history on the road or at home in the playoffs, going back to 1971. I like Seattle in an upset. I don't know. I haven't really trusted Green Bay all year. I think they're one of the weakest 30-3 teams I've ever seen. So let's go Seattle, Kansas City on Sunday. Let's go 49ers. I don't love the 49ers, but I don't think Cousins has another one in him. And, let's do this. I think Baltimore wins, but I think it's going to be a tough one.
I think the Titans could upset them with that running back and Derrick Henry right there.
I don't want the Titans to win, because if they win, you're going to get an offseason of Lamar Jackson still can't win in the playoffs. Then you're going to get that narrative and that crap, and just on a selfish, for some reasons, that's why I'm picking Baltimore, because I do not want to hear that. Because again, I mean, we live in a world like that where, the Jackson has yet to win a playoff game. I know he's only played it one, but the Titans beat him, and he doesn't play necessarily well. Now he's 0-2 in the playoffs, and now does the Baltimore offense, does it really, I mean, if you're a Steelers fan, you're happy because now there's doubt again in Baltimore, and they don't win another ring and whatever. But as an NFL fan and someone that personally really enjoys watching Lamar Jackson play, I do not want to be subject to an offseason of can Lamar Jackson's game plan and offense work in the playoffs. So, but I definitely can see the Titans thing. I just don't think it'll happen. I think Jackson's good enough to pull out the win.
And you know what? Real quickly, right now, I know a lot of people. There's been quite a few people parading the fact that both teams should get a chance at possessing the ball in overtime. I'm sorry, Brian, but I don't know about you, but I'm tired of making excuses for the Saints. I don't get me wrong. You had a legitimate call last year that arguably cost you a near shoo-in appearance in the Super Bowl, considering how close that game was. And yesterday, both defense really balled out yesterday. And then they had the final play in overtime and on an arguable possible offensive pass interference, which really wasn't too much of a big deal. I say this as a solution. People really want to change overtime that bad, and I don't want to see a change. If I had to make a change, this would be my idea. Let me know what you think and your thoughts on the overtime. This would be my suggestion. Overtime in the NFL, regardless of what happens in the first possession, if you score a touchdown or a field goal, you let the other team get an opportunity to try and tie it, go the length of the field. If you match it, then it's the third possession. Whoever scores that go-ahead score, that's the sudden death score. What do you think about that?
I like that, to be honest. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's cool. I think if you allow a touchdown, you should lose. I'm good with that. I've always been good with that. Even when Tebow did that in 2011. I like it. I was actually at a family reunion Saturday night, the end of the holiday partying and whatever. That game was on, and you had a room of people that don't like either team, but they found themselves motivated to the screen and discussing overtime and discussing everything. I think the replays really kill the NFL, how long it takes. I think we ordered our pizza at the start of that Bills game-tying drive, and we were done eating by the time it was over. It was like 40 minutes. It was like in real time. I mean, the replays to me are what's killing the NFL, and that's really my thing. I thought in general the NFL had a major win this weekend. All the games were close. They were all great games. The Patriots lost, which if you're not a fan of New England, you're probably happy. And just in general, we're going to get different teams now in the Super Bowl other than the Colts, Broncos, Patriots, Steelers. So I think fans in general are going to like that. So, no, I have no issues with the overtime. I just think, to me, you should be able to figure out whether or not it's a completion or not, or a fumble or not, or whatever. You should be able to figure that out in 2 minutes. There should be a 2-minute timer. In 2 minutes, you should be able to figure it out. With all the replays that we have today, and with somebody in New York whose job it is to make sure that the call's right, it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. And that's really my only gripe.
Yeah, definitely couldn't agree more, my man. I will say this. I want to see the Texans probably get it, only because T.J. Watt's brother, J.J., making a huge game-changing sack in the third quarter this past Saturday, which helped lead to the comeback of the Texans, which eventually beat the Bills. But I tell you what, for a 100 season of the NFL to conclude, real special, because I'm going to go this weekend. I'm going to go with the Vikings and Titans and upsets, and I'll go with the Packers and the other team. I'll go with the Chiefs. But I tell you what, well, it would be real sweet to finish off this 100 season of the NFL, including the playoffs. You know what would be real special?
What's that?
How about have the Super Bowl where it all began? Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl.
I'd be all for it. It won't be $12, and there won't be 30,000 empty seats like the first one. So I'm all for it.
I'm definitely with you for there, right there, too. I think that'd be a great matchup right there. A team who's looking to win their second, well, you got a team trying to win their fifth, but then a guy and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Patrick Mahomes on the young up and come up, trying to get his first, trying to snag the torch away from Aaron Rodgers, or can Aaron Rodgers win his second, his first without Mike McCarthy? I feel those would be some awesome headlines right there. And of course, Andy Reid got put in there, just like Kirk Cousins at quarterback, guys who can't win the big one.
Crazy too that I did a story about this today. No Super Bowl winning coach has ever won another Super Bowl at his next stop. Nobody. There's been 12 people that have tried. So that's what Mike McCarthy's going to try to do now. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Brian, my man. Hey, well, always a pleasure talking Steelers and NFL with you, my man. I know we got one more game next week coming up. Clemson, LSU. This will be my last one, but I know you're also an Ohio guy. But who you got in the college championship game next week?
Well, I hate the college football playoff, and I would totally be cool if they got eradicated it. Because in my opinion, I would much rather if it was up to me, I would just rather see Ohio State in the Rose Bowl every year. Because when I was a kid growing up, we had 3 goals: win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, win the Rose Bowl. So Clemson's going to win because let's go LSU. I think Clemson, they have all that experience, and I don't think people really understand how important that is. I mean, when Ohio State had that 16-0 lead, I mean, Mike Tomlin always says don't blink. Clemson didn't blink. They stayed with it. They understood that the college football playoff is like a Super Bowl where it's longer than a lot of games. The intensity is so high that it's easy to burn out. I think OSU burned out early in that game. So I think Clemson, for a lot of reasons, will make it really close. But I think that Joe Burrow is too good. And, and I want to see Burrow win it. He's an Ohio guy and went to Ohio State. So it'd be nice to see. And, the next quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals will start off with a national championship win.
Brian, always again, definitely got to hook up again. I definitely want to hopefully after the Hall of Fame class is announced following the Super Bowl weekend, either that Monday, I would definitely like to follow back up to you here, like a little afterthought, little reaction if we can until then. But always more than welcome to call back just like anyone else. Thank you very much. You helped make this show a very good one as always. And pleasure keeping in touch with you. Thanks for all your answers with everything, including everything on the 2010 All-Decade team. That I can't wait to see who's going to be on that. So it's definitely a fun way, a great season, 100 season in the NFL. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, that is Brian Diardo of CBS Sports. You can follow him on social media, on Twitter, at Brian Diardo. Enjoy the games, my man, and enjoy the college football championship next Monday. And like I said, let's do this again. Please stay in touch, my man.
Sounds good, buddy. You as well. Have a great one. Happy New Year.
You too. Happy New Year as well, Brian.
All righty. See ya.
Later. Bye-bye, my man. And that was Brian Diardo right there of CBS Sports. And, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that right there. I think for the Steelers, I maintain that stance. I'm definitely going to go with Troy Polamalu and Alan Faneca. I think Alan Faneca, he's waited obviously a long time right there. I mean, this would be like about almost 10 years he's waiting to get in. But I got to say, I mean, I would give him the edge over a guy like Tony Baselli right there. I mean, just being a Super Bowl champion in that regard with the Steelers under Cowher's team, he's got to be the guy. And I think Cowher definitely deserves a spot, I think, this year. Because remember, it's going to be 5 minor players plus 10 seniors, 3 coaches, and 2 contributors, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I got that last 2 mixed up, but that's how it's going to be for this year. And like I said, if I had to choose 5 modern era players that would go into the Hall of Fame, I remember Stan Severin was putting this on Twitter. I would definitely, like I said, Troy Polamalu. I would go with Edgerrin James, famously of the Colts, Carlos Seahawks. He was also a member of the 2000 All-Decade first team, as was Troy Polamalu, but he was on the second team. So he was a member of the 2000 All-Decade team. Then I would go with Zach Thomas of the Miami Dolphins. And then I would go with Richard Seymour of the Patriots and Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champion, 7 Pro Bowlers, 3 All-Pros. And then, of course, last but not least, for your fifth guy, Alan Faneca. So those would be my five. Again, that'd be Troy Polamalu, Edgerrin James, Zach Thomas, Richard Seymour, and Alan Faneca. Those would be my five minor guys. And then I would definitely go as far as like the seniors. No doubt about it. I would definitely put in Bill Cowher. I'd like to hear you guys tweet me your thoughts or comment on the Facebook page as we look at it. But I just feel like Cowher's definitely waited quite a while as well. I think he's done more than Johnson, even though he didn't have Super Bowl dynasty. But he has the highest win percentage in career win-loss percentage with 62%. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's also a coach of the year, too. Something that Jimmy Johnson's also done once as well. And if you had to ask for contributors on this list, too, I mean, who I put in there, I would look at a guy like Ralph Hay, one of the co-founders of the League of the National Football League back in 1918, of the Canton Bulldogs, who had a 22-6 win-loss record as an owner, 786 win percent, 2 championships. I think you had to put him in there. And then I think you had to look at a guy also, too, in this, probably Art Modell. Art Modell, I mean, from originally being an NFL team, who actually was a good sport as far as like moving over to the AFC to help with the merger about 4 years after the Super Bowl was formed. I know a lot of people in Cleveland, he's unforgivable moving the franchise to Baltimore, even though he couldn't take the Browns name with him successfully. But a guy like Modell was another guy who definitely cared about like the team, the franchise. He had 2 championships, 1 NFL championship, and a Super Bowl with the Ravens. I think at some point you have to look at what's wrong is wrong, right is right. And I think Modell definitely deserves a jacket in there or a bust. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Men of Steel podcast. I want to say thank you again for Brian Diardo for joining me here. Love having you on here, my man. It was definitely fun as always. Definitely want to get in touch with you again. But like I said, you can always catch me here, usually on Mondays and Wednesdays, like 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. The telephone number to hit up, just like Brian dialed in, is 312-209-2232. Again, that's 312-209-2232. All questions are welcome. I got to get into a few comments real quick here. RJ Twitty, thank you very much for following the page and for the messages. LSU wins by 10. I'm going to go with LSU as well for next week, just for the simple fact they beat Alabama earlier in the season. And then right here, too, we also had another comment on here. I seem to have lost it, but that's about it. But anyway, like I said, Mondays and Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Hit me up on Twitter, at Prodigy Richey, at Men of Steel CGR, Instagram, Men of Steel Nation, of course, my YouTube channel, Men of Steel Podcast. As always, leave it. Don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, serious. Here we go. I gone.